Welcome to the Sandy and Toddcast, a podcast about all things strange, unusual, and a little bit odd. Why? Because that's how we roll. What are we talking about this time? Check it out. Episode 6. I can't believe it's been 6 weeks, Toddcast. 6 episodes.
Are we still doing the Sesame Street thing where it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12?
I'm glad you can count, but if you're not going to do it with me, then I don't think we should anymore.
I'm not going to do it with you. I feel like it's either going to be something that I do by myself or we just don't do it.
Would you do it by yourself?
No, I wouldn't do that either.
Yourself. My eyes just lit up. I was like, he's going to do it by himself.
No, I'm not.
All right. What was me? All right. So the hubby's here with us this week, Todd.
Yay!
Yay, Dave!
And I have no idea what the hell you guys are talking about.
Well, that's even better because do I have a plan for you?
This
lucky
ought to be
me.
a lot of fun. The initial premise of this episode was to have him in here because when we first started dating and he sort of realized that I was into the paranormal, he was one of the biggest skeptics in the world. Although there was something that he is capable of doing. We'll get to it in a little bit. But he was capable of doing things that were, I guess you could consider them paranormal, and he still was a big skeptic. But over the years, it's kind of changed. So we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. So welcome, Dave.
Thank you. I have to keep the dog busy.
To our insanity. I know Spike is down here on the floor. And he's
that's
excited.
Not a euphemism.
No.
That's not a euphemism at all.
Spike's excited because we're both here in the same room. We have some weird news that I had to share with everybody that I saw this week, and I wanted you all to know about it because I really want to know what you guys think. So in Washington State, there is a new company that is the first full-service human composting funeral home in the United States. Fully operational now. Fully operational.
Okay, yes. You know what? I know we mentioned it before we started recording. You asked if I knew what you were talking about, and I said, no, I didn't. But yes, I do. I know exactly what you're talking about. I do remember seeing it.
I am so intrigued by this because they have 10 right now. They have 10 of them. And apparently what you can do if you're a family member is, Dave's just looking at me like this is crazy. Apparently,
of course it is.
Apparently, though, what you can do if you're a family member, in non-COVID times, you can actually be there when they put the body into this, like, barrel-type thing.
The recycle bin?
The recycle bin. And then it takes about 3 weeks, I guess. They put it in with wood chips and different kinds of composting materials to help the body break down faster. And the whole thing, they monitor it 24/7. The whole thing takes about 3 weeks to do. And then you can, either the family can take the remains back as soil, or because it mixes in with the soil, or they have this area, I can't remember where it is, but they have this area that they're trying to sort of reinvent and ecologically reinvent, and so you can have your remains put there. So you can become part of this project.
So we know about ashes being spread. So now we're talking about people being spread into soil and replanting and...
Yeah, and this idea has actually been around for quite a while. They have been talking about this because there's a place called the Body Farm. Have you guys ever heard of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a place, it's called the Body Farm. I want to say it's in Texas. But anyways, that's where they do a lot of research. They take human bodies and they let them decompose on the land. This way they can find out how someone died. They can find out how long they've been dead just by using these bodies, these human cadavers, as the experiment. And so the human body actually is an amazing fertilizer.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of intrigued by this. And one of the ladies her mom had passed away, and her mom was very big on, saving the earth, the ecology, and things like that. And so she had her mom do it, and she was very happy that she did it because there's no embalming, there's nothing. I mean, it's a completely natural process And you can even, I think I read in the article, they have like closed circuit TVs. So you can watch your loved ones.
See, now I think that goes too far, doesn't it?
I don't know.
I mean,
the whole thing is very weird. I will gladly admit that.
I'm still a little puzzled by it. So you get your compost and you put it back there like by the tomatoes? What do you do?
The body breaks down. So then it just becomes part of the soil. So then you take the soil and you put it in the land that they're trying to save and you plant trees. So it's the equivalent of vegetable compost.
Well, and there is that thing where you can like become part of a tree's root system. You know, they put your body in that to kind of feed the tree, and then you instead of having a headstone, you have a tree in your in your name or in your honor. Or whatever.
I have always been really. Dave will tell you this. I have always had a really hard time trying to figure out what the heck I'm going to do when I'm dead, because I was born Catholic. He's Jewish. I don't really consider myself Catholic anymore. I'm more of a spiritual person, although I've held on. Yes, I'm a shaman. I've become a shaman. So we've always thought, okay, non-denominational cemetery, that's fine. But then I get to the point where I think, do I want to be in the ground? Do I want to be cremated? I'm not really sure. Either one sounds great to me. So now I'm a little intrigued by this idea and helping the earth. Does that sound really weird to you guys?
No, because we know that nobody's going to care once we're gone. We've actually only half joked about that who's going to come and see us in the cemetery? Is it really going to matter?
It's true.
I think about the fact, like, okay, so my mom passed away a couple of years ago. I can count on one hand how many times I've gone to visit the grave because I just don't connect with her that way, you know?
It's very...
And so...
You know, you're right. Because when my grandparents have been gone for... my grandmother's been gone 30 years. My grandfather's been gone 20 years. And the first 10 or 15 years that they were gone, I didn't go to the cemetery once. It was a very difficult thing for me to do because I'm of the idea that you hold on to your memories. You don't go and look at the headstone all the time. It took me about 15 years to get to the point where now maybe once a year I'll go. I go and I... kind of talk to them and stay for a few minutes. I'm still not big on that. You're right. So would you guys do this?
I'm down for it. I really am. I'm like, my thought process has always been I don't want to be buried because for me, I don't believe that my body means anything once I'm gone anyway. Barely means anything now.
I agree, though. I agree. I get you.
But, so I've been thinking about being cremated, and that's fine. But, I mean, I don't want to be in an urn on somebody's mantle. I want to be spread someplace. So to me, instead of going through that process, this just seems like it'd be more natural. Now, I do not want a camera on me, and I don't want somebody watching me decompose. That's not how it works.
I don't think they watch you decompose. I think it's probably some people just want that peace of mind and that solace to know that's where their loved one is. It's sort of, I guess, a grieving process and dealing with it. They don't, I don't think they can watch you decompose. That's pretty gross. But that, speaking of decompose, the business name is called Recompose. So instead of decomposing, you're recomposing. I don't know. I like it. I think the idea is kind of cool. It may seem weird to some people. I don't know. I kind of like it. I think it's cool.
There's also willing your organs, too, which obviously is weird to a lot of people. Even for me. Not a heavily religious background, but in the Jewish religion, they don't have open caskets. Right. So when I would see open caskets, it was kind of like, well, that's kind of odd. There's the body. So it's a little bit different no matter how you look at these things.
Yeah, but I've always said take my organs if anybody wants them. But now I'm diabetic, so I don't even know if anybody would want my organs anymore. Even though I'm healthy, they probably wouldn't want them.
They could study them. Is this something like, could you guys, Dave, you seem like you're a little questioning it a little bit, but it sounds like, Sandy, you're interested in it. Do you think it's something that you guys could come to an agreement on and actually do as a couple? Or are you guys, here's a question, are you guys willing to have different ends of your life? Like if one wanted to do this and one wanted to do something else. How do you feel about that?
Depends on if he's pissing me off or not.
Yep, I may be in the ground long before I wanted to be.
No, I don't know. I would do this. I think I would really do it because I'm not the kind of person that would say, "Oh, it has to be this way or this way." I'm open-minded by nature.
I could be one of those weird news headlines. Woman composts husband.
I know, right?
And catches it on video and live streams it. And,
That's right.
And makes money doing it.
That's right.
Back there with the tomatoes.
So anyway, so I wanted to tell you guys about that story because I thought it was interesting. I don't know. I think I would do it. By the time, hopefully, knock on wood, by the time that either one of us would need it, it'd probably be a little bit more settled and established, and there'd probably be kinks worked out of it. I don't know.
And again, because we talked about not having a lot of people in our lives, family-wise, that are really going to care coming to the cemetery or whatever, I don't think it really matters to me.
No,
I mean,
once
we're
you're
gone,
dead,
we're gone.
dead. And
right.
if you can help the environment and you can help the earth, why wouldn't you? That's just how I look at it from an open-minded standpoint.
Well, one of the reasons we wanted Dave on the show today was to kind of talk about the fact that he was a real skeptic. I think, Sandy, you and I are both skeptics even to this day. We believe in it. We believe in paranormal things, but there has to be some proof behind it before we'll just kind of say, yes, it is.
I call it healthy skepticism. I'm open-minded, and I believe that there are things I've experienced and seen and heard that are real, but I want to rule out all of the other common sense, I guess you could say, possibilities before I say, okay, this is paranormal or this is unusual,
I never really had a taste of it, so I had to be naturally skeptical because I never saw it, I never went through it, I never really knew anybody that was into it.
Is she the reason why you kind of opened your mind to it a little bit and started to consider the possibility?
Watching some of the TV shows, that was probably the beginning of it, and then doing some of our own investigating and actually hearing some of it. It's not that I wouldn't believe it. It's just, like I said, that I just never had a taste of it. I never had a feel for it, so I didn't know anything about it. So, of course, I was going to be like, I don't know about that.
It was funny, too, because I would just drag him along on these
I was going to ask that question. I was going to ask about your dragging him along.
Yeah, I did.
But most of the time it was vacation, or an overnight stay somewhere.
Yeah, I'd say, well, if we're gonna go on vacation, why don't we go here? And I have the perfect place for us to stay, Dave. And then we ended up at haunted hotels and New Orleans. I mean, some of the big hot spots: St. Augustine, New Orleans, Savannah, Georgia. We stayed at an amazing place down there that was haunted. But I would kind of drag him along. But we would make it into vacation time. And one thing that I always thought was interesting is that Dave was kind of skeptical about everything and thought it was a little crazy, pre-experiencing things himself. But Dave actually does Reiki.
Yeah, when you told me that, I was like, you got to be kidding me.
He didn't know he was doing Reiki.
I didn't know it. I kind of knew, but I didn't.
Mashing potatoes.
But I didn't know it had anything to do with the so-called paranormal world. I have a friend who many years ago was into it and also was physical therapy. And so I just thought it was something that was kind of along the lines of physical therapy. So she showed me some parts of it. This was probably early to mid-'90s. And so it didn't even feel like it was an interest. It was just something that came to me. And then my son would have an earache. And so I thought, let me try that. And it seemed to be working this time and the next time and the next time. And so I really didn't think much of it. I just didn't know how it worked, didn't know why it worked, but it just seemed like it did.
Before I got diagnosed with diabetes in 2012, I had pretty full-blown diabetes, and I didn't realize it. So I used to get a lot of headaches on a daily basis, and he would give me Reiki and help my headaches. And we've done it on the animals, too. He's given Reiki to our animals.
I didn't really look into it and didn't know about it. It was almost like just this thing, and I just didn't know. Like I said, I didn't know how it worked or why it worked. It was like taking aspirin. It just seemed like, I think it worked.
But obviously that was something that wasn't quote unquote normal. When you were talking about like you didn't grow up with it, you didn't experience it growing up. This was a little outside the norm. Do you think being able to exercise those abilities also helped you keep an open mind when it came to some of the stuff you were to experience in the paranormal world?
Not really, because I didn't know that they were related until Sandy mentioned it years later that, that's part of the paranormal world, and I didn't know that one had to do with the other. I thought it was more of a physical thing, sort of like the physical therapy, because it was a physical therapist who told me about it, and so I just thought it was one of these kind of, energy feeling things.
Well,
like biorhythms. If you remember, many years ago, I have a friend in Pennsylvania who her father was a chiropractor, and they were big into, this would be in the early to mid 80s, biorhythms. So I just thought it was something similar to that.
Well, energy work in and of itself is not, I wouldn't consider that paranormal. Energy work. I think it's once you take it to a different level, and once you use that energy work to, I guess, affect the person that you're working on and stuff, it is in the paranormal realm. You just happen to be somebody who can harness it and use it. And when he would perform Reiki on our animals, they'd actually get weird looks in their face, and they'd look at him like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, we had one
they
cat.
Could feel it.
One cat specifically that just really didn't want to be a part of it. We used to laugh, and we actually still talk about that every once in a while. That I can remember, she was an older cat, and I don't remember why we talked about doing Reiki for the cat, but it was like, nah, I don't want to be a part of that. And she just kind of looked at me and like hit the road.
So, and he wasn't touching her. It's not like it was affecting her, except the energy obviously was affecting her. But that was pretty.
Yeah,
pretty
but Jack,
funny.
our dog, was also had a kind of a funny look when he had several afflictions. He had several problems, and so I tried it on him a couple of times, and you could see he just reacted. He didn't react badly to it, but you could just see he kind of looked like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, what's going on over there? So.
Well, I would guess for them even it's very surprising to have that happen. They're so used to touch and hearing our voices and all that kind of stuff, to possibly feel something when nothing's even touching them probably is a little surprising.
So then after that, I would bring him, I would say, let's go to New Orleans, or we stayed at the Dauphine Orleans Hotel. That place is absolutely gorgeous. That was great. We stayed in Savannah.
But I see a theme here, though. Every city that you've mentioned that you've gone to is haunted.
Of course. I want Dave to tell you his take on some of the experiences that I've told you about.
Well, Dave, what's your take on the experience of being on the battlefields of the Civil War and seeing the young men walking down the street as you were driving by?
I am the skeptic. I don't know how much of that actually happened the way she thinks it happens, as opposed to the way I have. I've never said that, no, that's not what it is, but I don't believe anything that really went on there. We were in the room, I'm sure she told you about, where the couch moved. And,
no, I haven't told that story yet.
Well,
I haven't told that story yet.
Well, she can tell you that story, but without any, shall we say, evidence, I just have a hard time fathoming, really believing anything actually went on.
And that's part of skepticism, and that's the way I am as well. I'll tell you guys really quick. Let me tell you the story about the stay at the Cash Town, because I did say I was going to talk about it. When we first got to the Cash Town, it's the Cash Town Inn. The inn was taken over right before the Battle of Gettysburg by the Confederate soldiers. General Lee was there. All of the big ones were there. And the owners of the inn, the Mickleys, ran up into the attic to hide from the Confederates in the beginning of everything. And so that attic is now a suite called the General Lee Suite. And we stayed there, of course, because it was the suite on the Ghost Hunters episode, and I had to stay there. So,
and I think that was my first real ghost
that was your first
hunt.
Yeah, that was your first one.
Yeah.
So we got up there. It was a beautiful suite. Nobody else was in the inn that weekend except the first night was a ghost hunting group who, if you remember, got kicked out the second night. Downstairs, we were in the attic. There was nobody else in the inn except there was a restaurant on the main floor. So the stairway is a winding stairway. So underneath our suite, there was nothing there. Essentially it was just air because the stairway was winding. There was nobody under us. When we got in, we sat on the couch and I said, "Oh, look, here's a diary book." And a lot of hotels and inns will keep diary books for people to write in of their experiences. We were sitting there. It was about maybe 5 p.m. I don't even think the restaurant was open yet. And I just turned it to a random page, and sure enough, I'm reading an entry from a few weeks before where the lady said that they were sitting on the couch and the couch started to shake. And I just mentioned it to Dave, and all of a sudden the couch starts shaking. And it did it probably for a good 20 seconds or so. We just kind of looked at each other like, what the heck is going on? It stopped, and then it started again very briefly. So we were just kind of like, what the heck is going on? So that's when we started to think out loud to each other, well, could it have been something in the restaurant? Maybe the dishwasher was running. But the problem is, the problem is that we were on like a 3rd or 4th floor. The restaurant was way down on the main floor. That would take an awful lot of vibration, and it would probably irritate the heck out of all of the guests if the restaurant was affecting all of the rooms like that. And why was it only our sofa shaking and no other knickknacks? There was nothing else in the room that was shaking. To this day, we don't have an answer for that.
Right, and that's where, again, I'm not disbelieving, I'm not saying that this could never happen kind of thing with any of the possibilities, but without real proof, that's where my skepticism comes.
Well, sometimes, though, you can't go for 100% proof because there is none. But you have to weigh all of the circumstances, all of the possible explanations, and eliminate them or add them in. And when you don't have any other explanations, that's when I think you need to start saying, well, what if?
There was a great what if, though, in that room. If you remember also, there was one of those little electric candles that was in the window. And we were talking about the possibilities and is it haunted and Gettysburg. And all of a sudden the candle goes off. And I said, oh, maybe not. Maybe that's all I needed. And I went over and the plug was loose and I plugged it back in. So that's all it was.
But that is a great example of trying to figure out what it could be.
Right.
First.
Right. And with the couch, if you had a K2, if you were already recording audio and something else came through, again, we talk about this a lot on the podcast. If there were layers to that experience where the couch was vibrating and there was a K2 going off, and maybe somehow you got some sort of EVP response during that, then you could go, wow, maybe there was something there.
Right.
Exactly. Because you have layers of experience besides just the personal account.
Exactly. There's a lot of things that have happened to us over the years that I'll either put things in, there's no way it could be that. I'm really, really convinced that it probably is that. And then there's just my inconclusive file. And that's one of the ones in my inconclusive file. I'll give you another example. 6 o'clock in the morning, I was laying in bed in that room, and I woke up, and I felt the corner of the bed go down. It went down, and then it went back up. I don't know what happened, but I do know that it was 6 o'clock in the morning and I was half asleep. So to me, I have to throw that in the inconclusive file because is it highly possible, especially after the EVPs we received, is it highly possible that somebody was sitting on the end of my bed? Sure. Right. But can I necessarily say without a doubt that it was something like that? No, because there's other factors involved in it.
Right, and I'll throw in also just as an explanation here that we didn't even know that there were EVPs until quite a long time later, but from that room. And that was the first time that I actually experienced something that I could say, oh, yes, that really did happen.
Yeah, that was really crazy. It kind of blew Todd away.
Oh, yeah, those were great EVPs. So when you finally heard that, did you kind of think back and go, well, maybe there was something a little bit more with that couch? Than
No, I still,
he doesn't.
No, because
he's tough. He's tough.
He is. But it's good, though. That's good.
Yes, because they're just separate. The same thing that she had talked about, the cannon shots. That, they don't do this and they don't do that, but that's not enough evidence for me to say, okay, that's an EVP or that's some residual sound.
Right.
And the same thing with walking. We had seen these soldiers, and obviously that's a big deal in Gettysburg. We know because we saw them before. But we also saw a horse going by, and she thought maybe that was something else too. But again, I need something more concrete. You play me the EVP, or I watch some of these ghost shows with her on TV, and there's EVPs. I can't say that didn't happen. Obviously, it did. It's right in front of your ears.
And I also think that shows the difference between someone who is open and understands maybe that, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean I am an open person. I'm a medium. I'm an empath, and I can feel the difference. I was in an investigation last fall where I could literally feel this woman right standing with me, and I had an interaction with her, and I essentially told her not to feel guilty. Now, Dave may watch me do that and think she's nuts. Don't say a word, Todd. And
I was going to say, hopefully he's got like really good life insurance out on this situation.
No, I have just other experiences that can prove that.
Yes, I agree.
But he would look at me and think, I don't, he's not going to think I'm nuts. He understands what's going on with me, but he won't understand it because he doesn't live that like I do. So I can look at something, and it's okay, but I can look at something and kind of know that there's more to it than there is. But again, having common sense as well, I can't 100% say that. So seeing those 3 teenage boys walking down the road, to me, kind of puts my radar up and says there is a high possibility that we saw something that really wasn't there, as opposed to someone who has never experienced the things that I've experienced, who is just going to say, that's whatever. You're crazy. Not that you say I'm crazy in that way, but you know what I mean?
But that's why I said I don't necessarily disbelieve it. I just need more proof.
Right. Yeah. And I can understand that completely. The cannon shots, to me, I don't really have a doubt that was something. And what's interesting about a location like Gettysburg is that there are so many similar reports of things that they can't all be wrong in my thought process. They can't all be wrong. Entire battalions of soldiers have been seen and then just disappeared in front of people. When that would be my holy grail for Gettysburg, if I could see an entire unit marching in a field and 1 second later they're gone.
And catch it on video, so that you can actually back it up. What the tough thing about paranormal is there's always like a piece, not always, but there always seems to be a piece that you need to just throw out there and go, look, see, this is what I'm talking about.
Right.
A camera didn't operate correctly. You didn't have a camera on that area where the chair fell over or whatever. There always seems to be something. And that, is like people who search for Bigfoot and they swear they've seen him. And we've all seen the nasty, grainy footage of Bigfoot. Nobody can get a picture of this guy walking around the Northwest,
Exactly.
But it gets frustrating. The frustration comes from not the Daves of the world who say, listen, there might be something there. I'm not certain that there is, that specific thing was, but I believe there might be. And the people who go, absolutely not. There's nothing going on. You're absolutely wrong.
I agree. And, I get it. I myself am skeptical of people who proclaim to be a psychic. Spike's snoring in the background.
Snoring in the background.
He's
I love that.
snoring in the background.
I love it.
He's passed out. He is out cold. He loves having both of us up here. There's a difference between someone who proclaims to be a medium and someone who can tell you things that no one else would know. There's cold reading, and then there's wow, this person just blew me away because they don't even know who I am.
Right.
That I don't trust mediums, and including myself. I wouldn't trust myself in an investigation if we didn't have equipment. And I wouldn't trust equipment in an investigation if it wasn't someone like me there who can put the pieces together to make one solid story.
Right. Well, obviously, without it, it's just what if. It's just what is. And it's a lot of skepticism and speculating. But again, with Gettysburg, having those EVPs, it's not just, this happened or that happened, or I think it was this, or I think it was, because we've got a lot of that. We've got, I think it might have been this.
Right.
I wonder if it was that. But when you have the EVPs, that probably was the thing that made me turn the corner on, maybe there is something.
Well, even now, when I review audio from an investigation, after I go through it the first time, I set it aside. I isolate it, set it aside, and I'll have him come up with me as another ear and have him listen with me. He understands, and especially he's in radio too, so he's an audio guy as well. And he really feels like the EVPs are something. And so it's good to have him with me so that he can say, that's not clear enough, and work with me on that. So I think it's good. We were in St. Augustine, Florida, and we used the K2 meter in the keeper's cottage, and that's another thing. We don't know quite what to make of it. There's not much of an explanation to it other than paranormal. But again, we just don't know. We just can't tell. We don't know. So
I have a question that's not necessarily paranormal, but Dave, if there is a story that I need to know in being a friend of Sandy's, if there is a story that you have don't shake your head. Don't you shake your head.
I knew it was coming.
I've got a whole list here. I'm only going to go with one question. Give me a story that I could hold on to, and when I need to, I'm not going to pull it out and use it against her ever, but maybe I'll just give her that look, and then she'll know that I know.
I'm going to contact your sister.
Listen, she knows that I will threaten her life with it.
If there's a story that we can hold over her head, I don't know that there's anything that dire.
I'm pretty
that
straightforward
unusual.
with everything. I don't pull any punches. So
well, here's what I'll do. You've got my email address. You don't actually have to do it here, but you can just slip me that information.
Well,
I hate you so much. I just hate you.
One thing you probably know already, and she's probably mentioned to you, is that she can definitely be the Lucy to Lucy and Ricky of I Love Lucy.
Oh my God! I can totally imagine that.
And try that. Even in radio, the funny thing about radio was she kind of said, I think I'd like to try that, and I thought, yeah, sure you would. It's kind of like, I'd like to do, farming, or I'd like to build skyscrapers. It's like, yeah, okay, fine. And then she would try it one time, and it was like, yeah, okay, well, what are you going to do with that now? I guess I'll sell it on eBay.
Well, you have to at least try things. I wanted like a cotton candy machine. I wanted one of those I wanted one of those hot dog things.
Never used them, but we bought them.
We got a panini maker because I wanted to try it. I want to try.
So basically this summer you could have your own little fair carnival thing going on. Yeah.
At the
Dave can sell the food, you can run the rides, it'll be great.
Yeah, or make thousands at a garage sale.
But you know what though? That's just another example of how open-minded I am to try new things. I wanted to try radio. I did stick with radio though. Look what I did. So I'm pretty proud of myself for that. But, I think there's a big difference between radio and wanting a cotton candy machine, which I gave to my best friend Karen, by the way. The kids loved it.
Is there really a big difference between radio and a cotton candy machine?
No, none whatsoever.
I will say that I have gotten him into some interesting situations. And, I come up with schemes all the time, and let's try this, and let's do this, and how about if we dress up like this for Halloween, Dave, and, all kinds of stuff.
But part of that is because you're an Aquarius.
Yes. Agreed.
And we are dreamers, and we tend to be the person to lay on the ground and look up at the clouds and not necessarily see if they're a puppy dog or a birdie in the sky.
Right.
We want to figure out a way to be up there. So I give that to you. I'll be on your side on that one because I think a lot of my life I was always a dreamer too. I dreamed big dreams. And they went to hell. So
when I speaking of that, when I was a kid, I grew up thinking that by the time, when you're a kid, you don't have any real concept of time or age. When I was a kid, I thought I had always wanted to be in radio. I thought that by the time I was 30, I was going to own, not work at, but own my own radio station. And I thought that for many years. That was my goal in life. I was a dreamer.
And then you realize there's no money in owning a radio station, so you were smart enough to never do it.
Listen, I went to college for I was communications major with a concentration in radio. And about my first semester, I stuck with communications, but I luckily had a business minor because I have a business mind. But I realized that, full-time back in 1989 was like $9,000 a year. And I was like, I can't do this. And other reasons, too. Being an empath, I wasn't as outgoing as I tried to pretend and, make myself believe I was. I was very much introverted, and I never would have made it back then in radio the way I do things now. Never in a million years would have done it. Age has helped that greatly, and starting to understand the empath thing. But so I thought that I was going to. My dream was to own a radio station at the age of 30. So we are dreamers. We very much are.
The funny thing about radio is people think that radio people are outgoing and and just dog and pony show people, but what I have found, including myself, is most people in radio are actually introverts. They're quiet, they're shy, and that's their job. And I have likened it to basically actors that you've seen on screen, and I'm sure that those people are, for the most part, are probably that way as well. Tom Cruise is not Tom Cruise when he's home. He's probably just a kid goofing around, and that's really the way a lot of radio people are. They're just kind of shy and quiet. People that I work with are that way. They just kind of keep to themselves.
Right. I certainly am that person.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, to see me out in the community and all the events that I've hosted and all of the times that I've been out and acting, like this social butterfly, I have extreme social anxiety, and a lot of people never would have even known that. Obviously, it has to do with being an empath and being introverted, but nobody would even know that unless I told them.
But it's also a great understanding of knowing the difference between lifestyle and job style. And so when you go out there, you know how to do the job, you know what to do, you know how to work the job, how to work the crowd, and that's the key for a lot of radio people or entertainers. Once you get up on stage, you're a different person.
I always looked at it as playing a role, because I think that's part of the reason why I chose Brittany Lee as my radio name, because I wanted a name, but I looked at it as playing a role, but yet trying to stay as genuine as I possibly could in that role. So I became somebody else. A lot of the time, I would become someone else when I was out there as Brittany Lee, as opposed to being Sandy.
Right.
I was much more quiet and withdrawn when we would go out if I was just being myself, as to when I was representing a radio station and being my character of Brittany Lee. Totally different. So.
Well, that was that's the only question I was going to spring on him.
I find it really hard to believe that would be your only question.
I'll be honest. I mean, there's no reason to lie here. I've got a whole list of questions, but I figure maybe some of them aren't appropriate.
Oh, my God.
If you're enjoying this episode of the Sandy and Toddcast, there's more where that came from. Follow Sandy and Todd on Facebook. Just look for the Sandy and Toddcast, or you can subscribe to their YouTube channel and check out the video version each week there. Find these guys on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. Soon you'll be able to support the Sandy and Toddcast on Patreon and be able to follow them on Instagram. As always, thanks for joining in the fun, and stay weird.
Since Dave is here, and since he loves EVPs, and since I have just a little bit of evidence,
Yes.
I really wanted to get his take on the evidence that I was going to present this week. So
It's the little bit of concrete evidence that whether you're watching a TV show or you're getting it yourself, like we have, and we have gotten it a couple of times, it's the only real concrete evidence that we've seen. Yes, I've seen some of the K2 meters and some of the other things that, light up, or you watch some of the TV shows, and a lot of it is just unexplainable. You hope that it's something, but once you hear somebody actually say something or answer a question, that's hard to dispute.
He's listened to some of my EVPs, and it's hard to dispute those. It's it's difficult. There's a lot of times when I will make him do things himself, so use equipment and things himself, so that he can say, okay, it wasn't Sandy, it happened with me. Dowsing rods, we stayed at a place last winter, and I brought my dowsing rods along, and they were working for me. And then I said, Dave, I want you to use them so you can be sure that my hands aren't shaking, that there's nothing going on. And sure enough, they worked for him, which was very, very good. So Todd, tell us about this EVP.
Well, basically, I'll try and condense the story as much as I can. My mom passed away a couple of years ago, and leading up to her death, we knew she was going to die. We knew she was dying. She had stage 4 lung cancer, and she was in hospice at home. And right before she passed, you never know exactly what day it is.
Right.
Hospice caregivers can tell you that just by seeing the person go through a certain number of stage elements, they can kind of tell you when it's going to happen. And we knew it was probably in the next 2 or 3 days that she was going to pass. And leading up to that, I started having some what I would consider paranormal experiences in my home. And they matched up with paranormal experiences that my sisters were having in their homes at the same time.
Wow.
One of my sisters lives very close to me, within, like 20 minutes. And another one lives in another state. So when stuff would happen, we'd be like, oh my gosh, this just happened to me. And then the response would be, well, that's funny because this just happened, and it happened to be the exact same thing. So I remember I was working in my studio. One of the things that happened, I was working in this studio right here, recording and doing radio work that I always do. And I started getting interference in my headset. Kind of like old-time radio, where there'd be fuzziness and then kind of like a voice trying to come through, and then it would crackle back out. It reminded me just like watching MASH or something, and them trying to tune the radios in and stuff like that. I was hearing that in my headphones. Now, again, being a skeptic and having worked in radio, I'm thinking, well, something must be loose here someplace, so I'm jiggling wires and stuff. And it happened 2 or 3 times that day, and then the odd thing happened. My studio that I'm in right now is actually in the basement of my home. And I live in an older home, so if somebody is walking around above me, I know it.
Right.
I happen to be at home alone. Winston was in the studio sleeping on his bed, and I specifically heard somebody walk down the stairs of my house and walk across the floor in my living room.
That's wild.
And I heard it. Winston looked up immediately and heard it. And I'm like, what the heck's going on? So I went upstairs, and a door that leads to my stairs to go upstairs was shut. Now, no big deal, right? Well, the only thing is that door is never shut in my house. That door has never been shut in my house.
Right.
So adding the two things together and going, what's going on here? Right. I'm hearing people talking upstairs. There's nobody there. I mentioned it to my sister, and my sister said, well, that's strange because I have doors on my second floor that are never open because we don't use that part of the house. And lo and behold, They're open.
Wow.
As you say this. So again, personal experiences. Do we have anything recorded? I don't have anything. My mom passes away, and one piece of evidence that we got is kind of strange, because what it is, my dad tried to call my sister, and my dad's an older gentleman, doesn't like leaving messages on phones. So when it was obvious that my sister was not going to pick up the phone, he hung up and set the phone down. It's a wireless phone. Well, fortunately for us, he didn't actually hang up the phone. He just set it down. So the call actually went through to my sister's voicemail, and we got a recording that we believe has some voices on it. Now, I'm going to play a bit of it now. There's about 3 spots in this that I'll point out. When I start it, you're going to hear my dad set the phone down, and I have edited out some dead space in this. Mm-hmm. The whole recording was about 1.5 minutes. That's how long your voicemail will go on your iPhone until it stops recording.
Right.
But there's the first thing that I think you hear pretty easily, and you tell me if you do or not. So here's.
Did your mom live in the house?
Yes, my mom lived in the house, and she also passed in the house.
Okay.
Now, I'm not sure if you could hear that right there. I know the levels are a little low, but right there, right after he sets down the phone, and I will try and stop it and see if you can hear it again, but let me give this a shot here. He puts the phone down right here. Mm-hmm. I know what I think I hear. What do you think you may hear?
I'll let you have it first, Dave. Could you make it out?
No, I couldn't make it out. I could hear something. I definitely could hear something. A lot of times what we talk about is the cadence, sort of like what singing is. There's a sing-songy to voice. And
right.
So a lot of times when we can't make it out, even when we watch a TV show, a lot of times we laugh because they'll say, oh, that said hippity hoppity, and it just sounds like woo.
Right,
and
right.
And but the cadence is there. So I definitely heard something. I couldn't make out the words. I would have to record that, enhance it, make it loud, and listen with headphones to be able to make that out.
To me,
right.
It sounded like it said "get out."
That's exactly what I thought it said too. In fact, that's what we thought it said, and members of my paranormal team that I work with actually thought that too. I'm going to play it one more time for you.
Okay.
And again, I know it's soft, but we'll enhance it in the playback. So at that point, my dad he was in the kitchen and turned on the water. And I think that white noise in the background was what was used to say, get out.
Yeah.
That's my opinion of it.
It was pretty clear to me. I picked up on it.
It was clear to me, although I will be honest with you, it took me several listens, again, cranking up the headphones and listening really closely to it in order to hear it. There's another bit here that I don't know if I know what it says. And maybe it says nothing. So here we go.
Okay.
Now, there's one right there that I think is really, really clear.
That's very clear for me.
I'm going to play that one for you one more time. That is toward the end of the phone call before it stops recording, and I'll play it again right now.
Now, I will say that I've heard these before, but I do know, I mean, that is very clear to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I that one was definitely clearer than the first one. Again, a little hard to make out for me, not being able to get. I have cheap headphones on, and
sure,
I'm only hearing it. I'm only hearing it in one ear. And if I were able to, once again, record it, enhance it, listen with quality headphones, I might get more. But you could definitely hear something there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it said, I'll be back.
Yes, I agree. 100%.
I'm going to play it one more time real quick.
Yes, yeah. Now that you mentioned, I can hear, I'll be back. Yeah. It's a little bit, yeah.
And then there's one more right at the end here. And again, I've heard it, but I don't know what it says. And I'm not sure with our situation with the headphones and all that kind of stuff that we'll be able to figure it out tonight. But here's the very end of that phone call, and we'll see if you guys can hear it.
Do that again, Todd.
Yeah, one more time. I'm not sure if I can pick it up here right now.
Yeah, it's pretty low.
I think
I can hear the words.
There's something being said. It's short. I don't know. The first time I heard it, it sounded like the word home.
See, that's kind of interesting because I thought I heard that in there too, and I couldn't tell if it was 2 words or something else.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe I don't want to throw guesses out there, but I'm pretty sure I heard. For me, I thought I heard the word home. I'm wondering if it's something such as I'm home. It
may be. My perspective on all this was, and I've told this story before, and I'm not sure if I've told it on the podcast before, but when my mom died, the hospice person who was with her is actually a family member. And so while we were not there when my mom passed, she was able to discuss with us her last days. And my mom went through the typical things that people go through when they pass. And one of the things that she went through was, in her mind, family members who left came to visit her. And she saw them all. And at one point, she actually had to say to us when we did visit her, if you walk in the room, I need you to tell me you're here because there's so many people with me right now. I don't know that you've walked in.
That's really funny that you said that because I was going to ask you that question. When Dave's mom passed away, in 2010, Dave?
Yeah.
He flew to Florida. I couldn't go. He flew to Florida to be with her, and she was in a hospice situation. Dave, can you tell that story?
Which part?
The part similar to, what Todd's mom experienced.
I just remember going to see her, and we were all very hopeful because we didn't know it was at the end. And I remember bringing my father passed away in the late 80s, so I remember bringing a picture of their wedding, and that really touched her. But when she did pass away, I guess I was home already. Is that the part you...
No, the part about how Todd's mom saw all of her relatives coming to essentially cross her over and visit her. Remember you told me that your mom was seeing relatives?
Yeah, but I don't remember what she had actually said about that. We just thought even more amazing was the part that I got home and then she had, it was almost like...
I think she waited for you to come down.
Yeah.
I remember him telling me on the phone that his mom was talking about all of these relatives that had passed away coming to visit her and take her back with them to help her cross over. So when you said that, I can't believe you don't remember that. That was huge to me. And talking about that, so I was actually going to add, before you told that story, I was actually going to ask you the same question. Did your mom see people?
Yeah, she did. And she would even have conversations in the middle of the night and be talking to them. And the hospice person, our family member, was in the room with her during this. There was some other I'll be honest, there was some freaky stuff that took place as well that I can't explain. And we could go into it at another time regarding a shadow over her bed and what my mom said to the shadow after seeing it. So, there's a lot of weird stuff, and you kind of, because the hospice person was a hospice person, but also a family member, we kind of got an inside look at her last couple of days.
Right.
And it was freaky. And I also think that we all had some interesting experiences right after her death. Mm-hmm. And the voices that we heard on that phone call, here's my theory. I don't have anything to back this up. I can't say to Dave, listen, I know this, and this. All I can go off of is what I went through in my own life and match it up as best I can so that I can put some sort of perspective into what I hear and some of the experiences I had. I don't know that what we experienced was necessarily her, but I do think that it was energy that was left behind or released when she passed. And I do know this about life in the household that I grew up in. I had a great childhood, but my mom had a lot of anguish in life. And she and my father were not, I wouldn't say that they were the most loving couple ever. And I think that when she passed, that negative energy that maybe she had held on to for many years in her life finally released. Mm-hmm. And I think that, along with our own anxieties and our own energy building up because of this, created all this stuff in some way, shape, or form. How that happens or how I could somehow back that up, I have no idea. But it's the theory that I've kind of hung how I investigate on now, was that one experience in my life.
What's one of my favorite terms to use? Perfect storm.
Yeah.
I think it was right place, right time. I actually think that your hypothesis is right. I think that there's relationships between you. There's love, there's feelings, there's the negativity that she's borne her whole life that is now being released. I 100% believe that Dave's mom saw family members and truly saw family members, not just imagine them. People like to think that the dying are imagining things, that they lose their mind at the end of their life. And I don't necessarily believe that.
My belief is when you're dying, your mind is actually probably about as clear as it's ever going to be.
I agree with you completely. I think that your mom really was seeing them. I think they come to help you cross over. Now, do I necessarily believe 100% every teaching of, the Christian religion? I don't know about that. I can't give you a definite, but I do know that I do believe that you live on. I do believe that your energy does live on in some form, on some level somewhere. And if you're dying and you want to see your relatives, I believe that they will come to you.
I think they're already there. Typically, I think you just see them finally for the first time. If you've not been open to it the rest of your life, at that moment, those hours or days that you're basically releasing from this world.
We're born seeing things. We're born knowing things. We're only taught that we shouldn't believe or see or hear or feel things as we get older, but we're born that way. Why wouldn't we be like that in death? If we're that open as an infant, why would we not be that open in our last stages?
And I think a lot of people believe that anyway, because that's why we talk to, for lack of a better term, our dead relatives. We'll talk to our parents. We'll talk to our dogs. We'll talk to our sisters and brothers, and we'll say things that we wouldn't say to people alive. So, yeah, a lot of people believe it, whether they believe it or not.
I've been told a couple of times that my dog Jack is with me, that my grandparents are there. They've been described by people who don't even know me personally. They have been described to me as if they were standing in front of them, and apparently they were. They're all with us. It's just a matter of opening yourself up, I think, and allowing yourself to see them. Doesn't mean you're crazy. I 100% believe your mom saw your relatives.
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind. And I think, like, for me, again, leading up to her death, I think she was already releasing her energy before she actually passed. You know, I think you go through that dying process, and I think that she was already and so that would explain to me some of the things that I experienced leading up to her death. Here's the odd thing. I believe wholeheartedly that I'm an empath.
Yes.
But I do not experience my mother. Weird things do happen. I've had some weird things happen that I can't explain, but I don't experience my mother. I don't experience my grandparents, my aunts, my uncles, anybody who's passed on. I don't really experience that. So
I'm the same way. I've been told my grandparents pop in and out constantly, that Jack's always with me. I don't feel that. As an empath, as a medium, I don't feel that. But I wonder how much of that is just a natural blocking of energy. I sometimes wonder about that. Why don't, if I'm, and I can feel energy of I can go to any location and feel energy. I've not left my house.
You can feel my energy from across the country.
I can feel when you are not doing well I can feel when you're having a good day. How many times, and you can feel me. Now, how many times have I messaged you or you've messaged me and said, what's going on? Are you okay? Or the day, I love this story, the day I was looking through my grandparents' wedding photos and I was getting emotional. And at that point, you messaged me out of the blue and said, are you okay? What's going on? You know, I can feel you in Wisconsin, but I can't feel my grandparents around me. You know, there's got to be more to the story than what we see, because you are definitely a strong empath.
There are definitely different levels of that, and I can't understand any of it, but I know that it does happen, and I've had my own experiences that we've talked about. My best experience was when I was in college. My best friend in college lived across the hall in the dorm, and I would interrupt him, not because I was a smartass, because I just blurted out. He would say, "Did I ever tell you about the time?" And I'd say, "Yeah." And he'd say, "Did you know what I was going to say?" And I would say, "No, I just said that for the hell of it," because that was where the sarcasm was. He said, "Well, what was I going to say?" And I would finish the sentence. And I can't tell you how many times that happened, probably 100 times or more through the couple of years that he was in the college. I could never explain it. He couldn't explain it. He looked spooked every time I did it. And again, I never did it because I wanted to do it. It just seemed to happen. And he would say,
"It just happened.
You know that time?" And I'd say, "Yeah." Or he would say something like that. He would start a sentence, and I would finish the sentence. And he would say, "Did you know I was going to say that?" And I would always, come back with the sarcastic no. And he would say, "Well, what was I going to say?" And it happened just time and time again. So the fact that you can feel energy, to me, that's a similar kind of energy. I had another one, the Reiki gal. Here's a similar one there. She was on the phone. We were just talking on the phone for probably an hour, and she was going to play a song for me, and I'd say, and I just blurted out. I said, "Just play the lullaby already, will you?" And there was this pause, and she said, "Where the hell would I come up with a lullaby? I couldn't give a rat's ass about a lullaby if you asked me for one." But she said, "How did you know I was going to play a lullaby?" And I said, "I don't know." Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's got to be different energy levels that you've said. Yeah. It happened on a couple of other occasions with her as well. And those are really the only two people that I could say that I've had those experiences with. My friend in college, it just happened just many, many times, and I could never explain it.
I think I think anybody is capable of things like that. It's all...
I do too, and I think it also depends, like when you investigate. Mm-hmm. I think it depends on the energy of the people you're investigating with. That will determine how much activity you get. Mm-hmm. Because you can get a group of people going to investigate a location and they get shit. And then you can have two people who are in tune walk in and the whole place blows up because there's so much going on. And I think, Dave's story is a prime example of probably the energy between you and your roommate and this Reiki person. It's just right. It's a right fit, and so you guys can communicate without even opening your mouth.
It's fascinating to me. I purposely, now that I'm starting to learn how to manage the gifts I have, I purposely. Before, I think it was a defense mechanism most of my life, but now I purposely block it as much as I can. And then I have to open myself up when I'm going to investigate, which has helped because there have been times, Dave, do you remember the time we were at the concert and all of a sudden I said, "I have to get out of here. I don't feel well." We were in the middle of a crowd and at a concert, and I said, I can't be in here anymore. I have to go out, and I had to go sit in the lobby for a while and feel better. And at the time, I didn't really understand what was going on or why, but that happened to me a lot. We would go, we would make plans to go to a store, and we'd get by the store, and I'd say, "I don't really think I want to go in there." And he'd be like, "What? We just made plans to go to the store." And I said, "I just don't really feel like going in the store now." And he'd be like, "Okay, weirdo." And we'd drive someplace else. We would
kind of chalk it up to just her typical indecision. It was like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to get the BLT." And then, well, maybe I'll get the pork sandwich with the side of the hash browns. And then when it's time to order, then it's something completely different, or she may circle back around to the BLT. So there was a lot of that.
But it's the truth, and I never realized it until I started to learn more. And now I just try to shut it off whenever I can, because I want to go in these stupid stores. I don't want to be affected by the energy. I want to go and have fun.
You're just learning how to protect yourself a little bit more, even though Yeah.
We were in Washington D.C. in 2008 or 9, I think it was, in the Holocaust Museum, and the first real sign I ever had that there was something more going on was when we were in the museum and we were crossing through. They had taken an actual train car from the Holocaust and turned it into almost like a little bridge, like a doorway to go into this one room. And as soon as I stepped in the middle of the train, I felt like this huge weight on my chest, like I couldn't even breathe, and I stopped. So I made myself walk out, and if you look at there was like a little thing, like a hole dug around the whole train car, and they had suitcases in one and glasses and shoes in the other. And I just thought I was going to pass out, and I said to Dave, Dave, I don't feel well. I said, I have to go. And I was fine through the whole museum. And I said, I don't feel well. I have to go sit down. And I had to go sit for a little while and before I felt good enough. And then we just left not long after that because I couldn't understand why I felt like that. But it felt like somebody had put pressure on my chest.
Yep, and you also had that with the Utica Psych Center. There's a very, very old Utica. It's not used anymore. It's one of those from like the 1800s. You can see them on a lot of TV shows where they had a lot of bad doctoring, shall we say. And
the Utica coffin, they used to call it the Utica coffin. It was a cage that they would put people in and lay them in. They would be there for days and days and days.
It was the lunatic asylum at one time. And again, there have been a lot of TV shows on a lot of these across the country. And the building is still there. It's just an amazing looking, that Federalist with the big
columns.
Just columns in the front.
All my life, I had always wanted to get in there. I had always wanted to see what it looked like inside.
We did go on a kind of a mini tour. They didn't have a lot of the building open, but same thing. She went into one of the rooms there and didn't feel well.
No, and I was scared because I didn't understand what was happening to me. It was a room that had paintings that were actually done by some of the patients. They had them on display. And as soon as we walked in there, I just felt, again, like something heavy was on my chest. And I couldn't breathe. And I felt kind of faint. And I said, Dave, I have to get out of here. I don't know why. And as soon as I stepped over the threshold, I was absolutely fine. It was all the energy from the patients in those paintings that was affecting me. I had no idea what was going on. None.
Did you bring the paper and the pens?
Yes,
for the podcast?
yes. Oh,
Good,
I don't
because,
even know what I have.
We're going to play match game.
Oh, my God. All right. I knew it. I said to Dave, Dave, just have a piece of paper and a pen ready because Todd's going to play some dumb game. All right.
Hey, match game is not a dumb game.
Did I hear a theme song going on there?
You do, yes. All right, so match game, you're going to match me. Okay. I'm going to give you the word or phrase here, and then you're going to match me.
All
and
right.
whoever gets it wins. And I have
Todd.
a feeling, you win my friendship forever.
Yeah.
Then. All right. So give me your best response and write it down. Your best response to ghost blank. Ghost blank. And when you've written your answer down, raise your hand. All right, so they're both in already. Good. All right, so let's go around and see what we got here. Dave, we're going to start with you. What is your response to ghost blank?
Dun, 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 dun. Hunters.
Ghost hunters, is that right? No, it's not. That is not correct. Believe it or not, it's not. Now, Sandy, it's your turn to show what a great friend you are by matching me correctly. Ghost blank.
I said hunters.
How disappointing. I did this on purpose, but I went with
seekers.
Ghost pepper.
Ghost pepper.
Ghost pepper.
Boy.
I should have known. What is wrong with my head? I should have known.
That might be my 12th or 15th response.
My first response was going to be ghost hunters.
Yeah,
obviously.
we're not pepper people.
See, I don't eat peppers.
There you go.
Is that it? There was no more?
That was it. I just thought
that's the whole match game.
One. Yeah, that's the match game.
Let's
You both lost.
replay.
But your first choice was hunters, though, right?
Yeah, you both won. This was a great episode with Dave. He should be on more. Your mom should be on more.
I know. They can come on anytime they want. When I was doing my morning show, when I was trying to figure out how I was going to do a morning show by myself, I came up with characters. So it's sort of like my mom and Dave are our characters for the podcast.
Her mother is full of stories. Loads of stories.
I'm telling you.
She's a pip. Thank you, Dave, for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me as a special guest.
Yay! I can't believe you don't have a round of applause special effect.
I do someplace, but I will say this. It's kind of like on Barnaby Jones when they list all the people starring, and then they'd say, and special guest star Dave, at the very end. And then this week's episode, Scorpions in a Nest or something like that.
I don't know why Barnaby Jones makes me think about that song from the Eddie's Father, the courtship of Eddie's father, because I play it for Todd all the time. Let me tell you about my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yay! Yep. So, all right, let's wrap it up. Thank you, Dave, for joining. And thank you to Dan Phillips for his use of 600 Miles, our theme song. I love that song. And you can find Dan on Facebook at Dan Phillips Music. You can find him on Instagram at _Phillips Music. And thank you so much, Dan, for that. You can find us on Spotify, all of the places that you find your podcasts. We will soon be on Patreon, so you can help support us and keep us going and support our madness, our insanity. And we just thank you guys for your support. So episode 6 in the books, guys.
Thank goodness.
I'm going to go shovel some snow now.
Have fun with that.
All right, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
How many more miles left in this race? How long it takes, I don't know. In the end, it ain't about the pace. It always ends at the crossroads.